I understand you hate the president. I understand you love all of these rulings against him. You and I both know that's not a principle. You're a lawyer. What's the principle that divides when issuing a nationwide injunction is okay when it's not? When the Biden administration was subject to nationwide injunctions, you said that they were travesties for the principle of democracy. You didn't say the referral to Judge Kaczmarek was a travesty. You said his injunction was a travesty for principles of democracy. Yeah. So, in other words, the translation is just you didn't like the outcome. Is that right?
No, Senator. Look, we're talking about, I don't think Article 3 precludes this form of relief. So we are talking about prudential consideration.
Prudential meaning political?
No.
Then
no.
give me, so far I have yet to hear it. You've been questioned by multiple senators. I have yet to hear a principle other than the fact when you like the ruling, you think it's great to apply it nationally, including non-parties. When you don't like the ruling, it is a travesty for the principles of democracy, notions of judicial impartiality, and the rule of law.
Look, Senator, I'll say, I think I am self-aware enough to know that my view of the underlying legal question, I am sure colors my perception of the remedy. I think that we should all acknowledge that. And yet I do think
and why shouldn't we stop nationwide injunctions for everybody?
I think that's
what we're talking about today.
Because I'm not willing to leave without relief non-parties who are
you're
injured.
Not willing to leave without the ability to bind President Trump.
No, I
right?
think that...
I mean, when it's Biden, it's okay. No. When it's Biden, oh, it's a travesty. When it's Trump in office, it's, oh, no holds barred, whatever it takes, right?
I believe in
like
a powerful...
What was it that President Biden's staff said? We've got to do undemocratic, unconstitutional things to save democracy. Why is it the same
I believe
thing?
in a powerful president. I do believe in presidential power, but power and constraint are not at fundamental odds.
What is the principle?
Power.
What is the principle? The legal principle.
Welcome back to Founding Voice America, where the truth thunders louder than the lies of the swamp. I'm your host, and today we're lighting up the darkness of judicial hypocrisy and political double standards with the fire of truth and patriotism. Buckle up, patriots, this one's going to hit hard. So Senator Josh Hawley just took the gloves off. He sat across from Professor Shaw, a so-called legal expert, and he torched the left's judicial hypocrisy on full blast. What we just witnessed wasn't just a Senate exchange, it was a reality check, a wake-up call to every American who still believes our courts are about justice instead of politics. Let's break it down. This hearing wasn't about whether Trump did this or Biden did that. It was about remedies. About whether courts, especially single federal judges, should have the authority to issue rulings that apply not just to the people involved in a case, but to everyone. That's right, people who aren't even in the courtroom. People who weren't even part of the lawsuit. People like you and me. And guess what? The left loves it, but only when it's their guy in office. Now here's where it gets real interesting. Professor Shaw, this guy, folks, was horrified when a judge issued a nationwide injunction on Joe Biden's FDA. He called it, and I quote, a travesty for the principles of democracy. But now, when it's Trump getting hit, when it's conservative policy being dismantled by an unelected, unaccountable judge in some left-wing district, oh, then it's totally fine, totally legal, totally just. You see the game? We do. And so does Senator Hawley. You don't have to be a legal scholar to see the rot here. You just need a shred of common sense and a spine that hasn't been softened by liberal groupthink. This is why America is sick of the legal elite. This is why everyday Americans are losing trust in our courts, not because they hate the law, but because they see how the law has been weaponized. Senator Hawley called it out like a true patriot should. He didn't let this professor slither away from his past statements. He made him squirm under the weight of his own hypocrisy.
Thank you. Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, it's great to have this hearing. Thanks for calling it. Thanks to all of our witnesses for being here. Professor Shaw, nice to see you again. Let me just start with you, if I could, Professor Shaw. You talked about the fact that there have been lots of rulings against the Trump administration. That's absolutely statistically true. I disagree with almost all of them. In fact, I think all of them. But the issue of this hearing really isn't the rulings, is it? It's the remedies. Would you agree? And those are distinct things. You may think that the ruling is quite correct, but that's actually not what we're talking about here today. We could have a hearing on that. Maybe we should. But we're talking today about the remedy. And the question is a remedy that binds parties who are not before the court, is that an appropriate thing? I mean, aren't you concerned about judges binding non-parties in their remedies? You may love the ruling, but even if you do, don't you think it's a little bit anomalous for courts to be going out there and binding parties who are not before them? I mean, is that something we want to encourage?
Senator, I think that judges have been issuing rulings that impact non-parties since Marbury versus Madison, right?
So you're not concerned about it?
I'm not. I absolutely think that they can be abused, and
Well,
they
no,
have been abused.
wait a minute. You were very concerned about it just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
You said in response to a nationwide injunction on the Biden FDA's mifepristone rules, and I quote, "This injunction's a travesty for principles of democracy, notions of judicial impartiality, and the rule of law."
I think I've been consistent today. That was issued by Judge Kaczmarek in a single judge division. They're a problem. Those are a problem.
With him personally? Wait,
no.
Your testimony is if it's issued by Judge Kaczmarek, it's bad?
No, sir.
It's personal?
That is not my testimony.
So is the problem with the injunction? You were criticizing the universal injunction
issued by a judge in a single judge division. I've been very clear today
so
that those are a
issued
problem.
by a Republican judge in a Republican division, then it's bad.
No, Senator.
Otherwise, it's fine.
No, Senator. I think that single judge divisions
What is the
are a problem.
principal difference? I'm looking for a principle. I understand you hate the president. I understand you love all of these rulings against him. You and I both know that's not a principle. You're a lawyer. What's the principle that divides when issuing a nationwide injunction is okay when it's not? When the Biden administration was subject to nationwide injunctions, you said that they were travesties for the principle of democracy. You didn't say the referral to Judge Kaczmarek was a travesty. You said his injunction was a travesty for principles of democracy. Yeah. So, in other words, the translation is just you didn't like the outcome. Is that right?
No, Senator. Look, we're talking about, I don't think Article 3 precludes this form of relief. So we are talking about prudential considerations.
Prudential meaning political?
No.
Then give me, so far I have yet to hear it. You've been questioned by multiple senators. I have yet to hear a principle other than the fact when you like the ruling, you think it's great to apply it nationally, including non-parties. When you don't like the ruling, it is a travesty for the principles of democracy, notions of judicial impartiality, and the rule of law.
Look, Senator, I'll say I think I am self-aware enough to know that my view of the underlying legal question, I am sure colors my perception of the remedy. I think that we should all acknowledge that. And yet I do think
and why shouldn't we stop nationwide injunctions for everybody?
I think that's
what we're talking about today.
Because I'm not willing to leave without relief non-parties who are
you're
injured.
not willing to leave without the ability to bind President Trump.
No, I
right?
think that...
I mean, when it's Biden, it's okay. No. When it's Biden, it's a travesty. When it's Trump in office, it's no holds barred, whatever it takes, right?
I believe in a powerful...
What was it that President Biden's staff said? We've got to do undemocratic, unconstitutional things to save democracy. Why is this the same
I believe
thing?
in a powerful president. I do believe in presidential power, but power and constraint are not at fundamental odds.
What is the principle?
Power.
What is the principle? The legal principle. You've referenced prudence. You've referenced the judges you don't like. What's the principle of when an injunction binding non-parties, which was never done in this country before the 1960s? And let's see the chart, the Trump chart, which was done really only once Trump came into office for the first time. You don't think this is a little bit anomalous? You don't think that's a little bit strange?
A very plausible explanation, Senator, you have to consider is that he is engaged in much more lawless activity than other presidents, right?
You don't think
you must
this
that as a
was never
possibility.
used before the 1960s, and suddenly Democrat judges decide we love the nationwide injunction, and then when Biden comes to office, no, actually.
It's Republican appointees as well, Senator, and the 1960s is where some scholars sort of locate the beginning of this.
Can you identify one before then?
Mila Sahoni, who's another scholar of universal injunction, suggests 1913 is actually the first. There were others in the 20s.
The Republican endured for 150 years before there was a nationwide injunction.
Well, the federal government was doing a lot less until 100 years ago. So there's many things that have changed in the last 100 or the last 50 years.
So long as it is a Democrat president in office, then we should have no nationwide injunctions. If it's a Republican president, then this is absolutely fine, warranted, and called for. How can our system of law survive on those principles, Professor?
I think a system in which there are no meaningful constraints on the president is a very dangerous system
That's
of law.
Not what you thought when Joe Biden. That is not what you thought when Joe Biden was
every president
You
is
said that is not what
and
you
must
said.
Be. Absolutely.
You said it was a travesty for the principles of democracy, notions of judicial impartiality, and the rule of law. You also said
the Supreme Court senator agreed 9-0 with me on that.
You also said when Joe Biden was president, you said the idea that anyone would foreign shop to get a judge who would issue a nationwide injunction was just judges looking like politicians in robes. Again, it threatened the underlying legal system. People just trying to get the result they wanted. It was a travesty for the rule of law. But you're fine with all of that if it's getting the result that you want.
Sir, the Supreme Court agreed unanimously with me in that case, right? There was no standing. The case should never have been allowed to proceed. And the combination of parties without standing and the single-judge division.
No. We're talking. No, they did not. They did not issue a ruling on the nationwide injunction. You criticized the injunction nationwide. Listen,
issued in a case where no one had standing.
Here's the thing. We've now gone 6 minutes, and Senator Kennedy had you for 6 or 7. You couldn't identify a single principled basis. We all know the truth here, which is it's not just you. It's most of my colleagues over here on this side of the aisle, who I respect a great deal, and they were raising very principled objections to the nationwide injunction just 6 months ago, maybe 9 now. And you're probably right. My point is that all that's changed in 9 months is the occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And I realize that my colleagues on this side of the aisle very much dislike that individual, and I realize that you think that the rulings that he has lost are fundamentally sound. We might grant all of that. I disagree with all of that, but we can put that to one side. The question we're talking about here is, should judges, single judges, district court judges, be able to bind non-parties who are not in front of them? And you used to say no, now you say yes. Let's be consistent. I would just suggest to you our system of government cannot survive if it's going to be politics all the way down. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can I briefly respond?
Sure.
I mean, you invoked democracy a couple of times there, Senator. Judges are part of our system of democracy. Democracy is not as simple as majority rule. Judges have always served something of a
You would have it be as simple as
function.
majority rule. When you get the majority you like, you're for the nationwide injunction. When you don't, you're not.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to give you the opportunity that I often found absolutely precious when I was arguing before a panel of judges and couldn't get my answer.
Hawley asked one simple question. What's the principle? When is it okay for a judge to bind people who aren't part of a case? When should a single judge, in a partisan district, be allowed to halt a presidential policy nationwide? And the professor. He had nothing. Not one consistent answer. Because there is no principle for the left, only power. The principle is, if we like the ruling, it's justice. If we don't, it's a travesty. That's the game. Folks, this kind of double standard is poison to our republic. When the law is bent based on who's in power, it's no longer law, it's tyranny in a robe. This country survived for nearly 2 centuries without nationwide injunctions, and suddenly in the 1960s, when the left starts reshaping America, here they come. And the kicker? These weren't even common until President Trump. Once he stepped into office and started shaking the system, the activist judges came crawling out from under their benches with pens in hand and nationwide injunctions in mind. They knew they couldn't beat him at the ballot box, so they tried to beat him in the courtroom. This is the same elite class that screamed democracy when Biden won, but cheered when a single judge shut down Trump's legal reforms with the stroke of a pen. That's not democracy. That's dictatorship masquerading as justice. Now, here's what makes this even more dangerous. When the legal system becomes predictable based on party loyalty, it loses all credibility. What makes American law unique is that it's supposed to be blind, supposed to be neutral. But neutrality doesn't exist anymore in the courts, and the left is fine with that. They want rulings that apply to everyone, even people who never got a chance to defend themselves, as long as it gets them the results they want. Constitutional limits? Who cares? Due process? What's that? Democracy? Only when they win. This is why we, as patriots, must speak up. Not just online. Not just behind closed doors. But at the ballot box, in school board meetings, in courtrooms, in state legislatures, and yes, in the media. Because if we don't, if we let the legal left run the country through loopholes and judicial activism, then the America we love, the republic our founders bled for, will be gone. And let me be crystal clear, I don't want judges who act like kings when they're ruling against Biden any more than I want it when they're ruling against Trump. The principle matters. That's what separates us from the banana republics. Senator Hawley wasn't just defending Trump, he was defending the Constitution, defending due process, defending your rights. Because if the courts can target someone you don't like today, they can target you tomorrow. So to the professors and elites who think we're too stupid to see the double standards, we see you. To the judges who think they're gods in black robes, we're watching. And to the patriots out there who still believe in this country, who still believe in liberty, who still believe in the rule of law, do not be silent. Speak. Rise. Push back. Call your representatives. Elect true constitutionalists. And most of all, stand your ground. This is our country. We don't need permission from professors to defend it. This is Founding Voice America, where truth is non-negotiable and freedom isn't up for debate. If you're sick of judicial hypocrisy, if you're tired of watching our republic get torn apart from the bench, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this message with every red-blooded American you know. Because we don't bend. We don't bow. We fight for the founding voice of America. See you next time, patriots. God bless, and God bless the United States of America.